The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report. Informative, entertaining, and real since 1998.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report, PrimeTime Wednesday night. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the final step, the next step, if you will, WWE should take to ensure its continued success, to address any issues it still has. Also, we've got this week's Top 5, Ask the Booker, and a profile looking at Eve Torres.
Your head administrator.
Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Wednesday night starts right now.
This is the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime TV, the longest-running pro wrestling news program in the world, with your hosts David Hero and Damian Nelson.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Wednesday night. Damian Nelson sitting here alongside David Hero. And let's get right to this week's in-depth segment, David. And we're going to be talking about what I believe is the next step WWE should take. They've done some great things over the course of the last several months, including utilization of The Rock, obviously, the return of Brock Lesnar, a little bit of variation with the story of John Cena, CM Punk, the return of Chris Jericho, the Undertaker Triple H match, HBK coming back. A lot of little things they've done on the big side of things, but there's still so many talents in WWE who don't have what you call a voice.
Did you realize, though, with the exception of Punk and Cena, everyone else you brought up have been legends, icons, Attitude Era stars?
But it worked.
It has worked, but there's been no other growth.
And I think the reason there hasn't been that growth is there's still that one missing piece. There's still that connection, that link that needs to be made between us, the fans, and some of the stars that are in WWE. You look at such great talents as Dolph Ziggler. You look at well, that's one great example. But you look at so many people in WWE right now who just seemingly are stuck, who just can't take that next step, who just can't go any further.
Jack
And
Swagger.
when you look back on the days of old in professional wrestling, there was always one piece that they could be linked to. They could be thrown into a faction, if you will. And sometimes that worked, other times it didn't. But one thing that generally always worked is if you were paired with a tremendous mouthpiece, whether it be Jimmy the Mouth of the South Hart, the Colonel, if you will, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, even Paul Ellering, Paul Bearer, Mr. Fuji.
Mr. Fuji was never a great talker.
But he had the credibility.
He had the handful of salt.
He had the credibility with the fans where if you went under his tutelage, you meant something. And that's the point we're getting to. The resurgence of managers in professional wrestling is what I think is the missing piece right now. And they're doing it a little bit, David Hero, as we see with the former tag champs and Abraham Washington. But they have so many great people they could be utilizing in this role. One example, William Regal. Remember how great he was as general manager? He's great on NXT. He's got a mouth. He can talk. The fans relate to him. He has the ability and talent as well to have the credibility to have talent under him.
He's better than the guys he would manage.
Arguably, Bobby Heenan was better than some of the guys he managed.
I'm saying better in ring than what the guys he would manage. Bobby Heenan was a great worker. But he was a wrestler before a manager. But people didn't really want to see Bobby Heenan wrestle full time.
Right.
Okay, he was the weasel. William Regal has had fantastic matches with some of wrestling's biggest and top stars.
Not recently.
But his history, okay? Not recently because he hasn't been wrestling recently.
Correct. Which is why I would recommend utilizing him as a manager.
But the problem is if you put William Regal in there with somebody, he has to be the teacher, not the manager. He has to be the guy that takes him under the wing to show him how to win because he's a successful wrestler.
So he'd be more like a coach for Mr. Perfect.
Absolutely. Well, no, but that coach wasn't a very good coach because he never really had a good career.
He had a great whistle.
Well, did he?
I heard it.
I never listened. But William Regal would be fantastic.
Dusty Rhodes.
No. Great talker. Dusty would be more concerned about getting himself over than his talent.
If at the same time the talent gets over further than they are now, how does that hurt?
He won't because he'll be stuck in Dusty's shadow. Not because he's a big man, but because his larger-than-life personality would suffocate that young star. All the focus would be on Dusty Rhodes.
Let's say a Dusty Rhodes gets paired with, not the obvious choice of Cody Rhodes, because he's already a star, a main eventer, if you will.
If you will.
But
Zack Ryder.
But if he did, okay, fine. Great example. Let's say Dusty gets paired with Zack Ryder. Dusty's endorsing Zack Ryder. Remember when it's almost like, let's say it's the same scenario as when Randy Orton first came in and Jim Ross was talking about how great he was and that he was blue chipper and that was the next big thing and he was going to be the next big star in wrestling. He didn't necessarily manage him, but he gave that endorsement to him. So
Jim
would that
Ross is not the main eventer that Dusty Rhodes was.
I would say that as far as respect in the industry for their wrestling knowledge, they're on a similar plane.
Absolutely, but Dusty Rhodes is a Hall of Fame headlining main eventer who still to this day, I don't think he can give the spotlight. If he's on the main stage, I don't think he can share the spotlight. You need guys like Jimmy Hart, like Bobby Heenan, like Jim Cornette that could step back and let their guys be the stars in the ring. J.J. Dillon, let their guys be the stars in the ring. I don't know if a guy like a Dusty Rhodes could do that.
Matt Stryker.
Oh, yeah, he'd be great because he was always lower mid-card guy. So his ego isn't as inflated.
Michael Cole. This is something we've talked about before,
Right. Now,
and it seemed as if it might be
now,
going in that direction at a
Michael
time.
Cole could be the perfect balance of a Matt Stryker and Dusty Rhodes. But a real manager draws heat for the talent, but can also disperse the heat to his talent. I don't know if Michael Cole comes out to the ring with somebody, if he has the ability to take all that true heat he gets and puts it on his talent.
Paul Heyman. Not just with this whole Brock Lesnar thing, because, you know, depending on where you read, he's been working with Brock Lesnar and helping him along in all of his promos and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what, Paul Heyman, you know, but he's done it before. He's been, you know, he managed, you know, was it the New Midnight Express, right? I mean, he's managed a lot of talent. He had the Dangerous Alliance.
Right.
He gets it. Being a manager is not easy. You have to know how to be in the right spot at the right time. You have to know when to speak up and to pull back. It's not easy being a manager. That's why there aren't as many as there once was.
If there were, though, would this be the answer for a lot of these talents who just seemingly are, as we said before, stuck? Whether it's these people who we've listed or not, whether it's people who are coming through FCW, where, by the way, as far as I know, there aren't many managers, whether it's people coming through the indie ranks, where, by the way, as far as I know, there aren't many managers. You look at Ring of Honor, where you've got a few.
There's Joey Eastman.
You look at Ring of Honor, you've got Truth Martini, you've got arguably Jim Cornette could go back into managing very easily. But it just seems it's a lost art. How great was the Heenan family? Would the Brain Busters had gotten the accolades they got and been at the place they were in the card if they had not been paired with Bobby Heenan when they came to WWE?
Probably not. I mean, as talented as they were,
with the Red Rooster.
At the time, the WWF was more about characters, not really wrestlers.
Right.
So Heenan was great. But, you know, the problem is that most wrestling companies today don't want to have a manager on the roster because it's just an added expense.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I mean, look at Armando Estrada. He was the last real manager that they've had in wrestling. I mean, you could say there's been some of the divas, but
Well, Vicky Guerrero currently is somewhat of a manager.
Right, but I was going to say you can't really include the divas because they're more out there for eye candy. Even Vicky is just great at drawing heat, and that's what she does. But she doesn't disperse the heat to Jack Swagger and Dolph because the fans cheer for Dolph. And let's face it, the fans, as talented as Jack Swagger is, just aren't interested. So as good as she is drawing heat on herself, I don't think she's made those two guys better.
We're interested to hear what you have to say about the absence of managers in professional wrestling right now and whether or not the inclusion of them.
You know, you would be a great manager. You would.
I don't take bumps.
Well, no. Well, most of the good ones did, though. Yeah. But you know what? You're annoying. I think you're a great talker. You have, you know, tremendous skills that way. I could see you do that.
Well, I am the greatest wrestling mind in professional wrestling right now because I picked the team that dominated the wrestling industry last year in the Pro Wrestling Report draft, and got this cup to prove it.
You know, it's embarrassing when you drink your Jameson or that thing at, at the local
Watering hole?
watering holes, yes.
Again, you can send your comments to us at comments@pwrshow.com. And I think it's important to make a note about pwrshow.com. A lot of people who watch this program and who see us on a regular basis, including on May2 Milwaukee, are many times inquiring where they can catch episodes that they may have missed or episodes on demand. And the one place where you can get all of it is pwrshow.com. We definitely appreciate all of you out there who visit us regularly at pwrshow.com.
They can catch all the old shenanigans on pwrshow.com?
All the episodes are archived, pwrshow.com, and that is the best viewing experience that we provide on purpose for all of you to check out our episodes. So we appreciate those of you who do go to our website and also who follow us on Twitter and on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. I'm sorry, PWR Show. We're going to take a timeout, and when we come back, it's this week's Top 5 and a profile of Eve Torres. This is the Pro Wrestling Report, primetime Wednesday night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Anderson, and you are watching Damian Nelson and my super friend David Hero on Milwaukee's May2. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report, primetime Wednesday night. Damian Nelson sitting here alongside David Octavius, the Tiberius, the alleged backyard one-time Hall of Fame draft losing hero. And let's go to this week's Top 5, and let's kick it off with number 5, ladies and gentlemen. Number 5 comes in this week. He is the brand new Intercontinental Champion, the man who defeated the Big Show in a tables match this past Sunday at Extreme Rules, the endorsed superstar.
Super friend.
Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, the brand new Intercontinental Champion, number 5. Not only did he regain the Intercontinental Championship, but he gained a ton of credibility this past Sunday night at Extreme Rules by accepting and taking that beatdown and then walking out. There was a clear chant for Cody Rhodes by the fans out of respect in Chicago's Allstate Arena this past Sunday at Extreme Rules. Number 4 goes to a brand new star on SmackDown, one who is not new to the professional wrestling business, but one who has been very strong in his prior days in Ring of Honor and even in FCW, but now on the national stage on SmackDown, Antonio Cesaro. He's a star, ladies and gentlemen. I have talked about Claudio Castagnoli in the Ring of Honor days as a star and a man who has something very special. You are now getting a chance to see that each and every week on SmackDown, and he comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3, ladies and gentlemen, is TNA Wrestling. Yes, TNA Wrestling overall. The announcement of moving Impact to 7 p.m. on Thursday night starting on May 31st. Whether it was their decision or not, it does indeed allow them to get more exposure earlier in the evening against less competition, and this will be a good move overall for what has been a stagnant, ratings-wise, Impact Wrestling over the last few years. Number 2 goes to the segment between Brock Lesnar and Triple H. It was a showdown this past Monday night on Raw, and by God, did it ever look real. Of course it wasn't, but it looked that way. And that's what mattered. That's what continues to matter. They brought it and delivered and did everything they needed to do, I feel anyways, to progress the story, if you will, of the monster that is Brock Lesnar. I ain't afraid to admit, by the way, that I am terrified of Brock Lesnar. And number 1. Brock Lesnar gets 2 spots because his matchup with John Cena this past Sunday night at Extreme Rules takes the number 1 spot this week in the top 5. They just tore down the Allstate Arena in Chicago. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I thought I was going to get. I still think the match was too early, but at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with the matchup. It was a beatdown. Brock Lesnar beat John Cena all up and down the Allstate Arena on Sunday night, but ultimately it would be John Cena who would get the win in that matchup. I feel it was perfectly executed. So, that's this week's Top 5, ladies and gentlemen, and now it's time to go into the profile. And where we take a look at a star in professional wrestling and talk a little bit about where they stand right now in the business and what their future may hold. And this week's profile is Eve Torres.
Ooh la la.
The endorsed Eve, the head administrator of the John Laurinaitis
Nobody
administration.
does it better.
Eve Torres. Now, Eve has been around since winning the Diva Search contest in 2007. She would do some interviewing for WWE after that. She would be basically there since that whole period. But really, in the last 6 months or so, especially since the whole Zack Ryder thing, Eve has taken a top spot amongst not only the divas in WWE, but everybody in WWE. And here's what's significant about Eve. She gets a ton of TV time.
She's gorgeous.
She is, but a lot of the other divas are gorgeous as well. Eve specifically, I mean, how many segments did she have on Raw this past Monday night? At least 5 or 6?
Every time you see Johnny Ace, she's right there.
And a lot of times when you didn't, because she came out making some announcements about matchups and whatnot as well with her clipboard and all that stuff. Well, she arguably may or may not be the best wrestler in the world, but she has something very special.
She has that
does
it
Eve.
factor.
Exactly.
And what's cool about Eve is she's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's smart. She has a college degree.
Knows a little bit of.
She's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe.
Jiu-jitsu, yes. Thank you.
I think she's dating one of the MMA fighters, one of the Gracies it might be. I'm not
She
too
dated
sure.
Reggie Bush, by the way. Did you know
Did
that?
she?
She did.
Wow, who hasn't? You know, it's just, you know, Eve Torres, she gets it. She's a smart girl. She's been in entertainment, in sports entertainment. And you know what? She is a company girl. I mean, she goes out there, does what is asked. And, you know, I remember a couple years ago having a conversation with Gail Kim and Alicia Foxy. They both said Eve is the real deal. I mean, she may not be a Trish Stratus in the ring or a Lita, but she's close. I mean, she's there, she's talented, she's athletic, she's attractive, she is the kind of girl that can be on the cover of a magazine. And that's exactly what Vince McMahon and company likes. Wouldn't you agree?
I would absolutely agree. I mean, I endorsed Eve back during the whole Zack Ryder thing, which means that her stock will continue to rise unless you get your hands on her. There is something very special there.
I'm not that lucky.
She's not a diva per se. She's not a female wrestler per se. She's a character, she's a talent, and she plays a substantial role. And I think it shows the faith that WWE has in her by putting her along with John Laurinaitis in this whole administration,
But,
if you will.
what other diva could have filled that spot?
Did it need to be a diva?
Absolutely.
Really?
Who else?
So you're saying that there's
they're not gonna have a
man
diva as a
can't
head
be a
administrator.
secretary?
What guy wants to be the head of
You know,
administrator
last
for
week
Johnny
it was
Ace?
Administrative Professionals Day, and you're sitting here being sexist
I'm
again.
not being sexist.
You just said that.
That's the
Who
title.
else?
Hey, if you want to be Johnny Ace's head administrator, by all means, I'm sure he'll take an application from you. He's going to pick Eve.
Who else would it have been?
That's what I'm asking you. Who else looks the business part of it?
I do like her with the glasses.
Exactly. Put glasses on every diva out there. I'm not going to pick Kong. Right?
Karma is her name now.
Same thing.
Give it the times.
You know? They're not going to pick Kelly Kelly.
Well,
I'm just saying.
well, we'll see what happens with Eve over the course of the
You know
next
what,
few.
though? Kelly Kelly could have been a great one, though. Because the fans don't care for her anyhow.
Oh, they like her.
She could have well, okay, maybe it's 50-50. It's
Would've
kind
been-
of like the John Cena fans. You know what I mean? She could have done a good job. Because, you know, the guys don't want to see her wrestling. They just want to look at her. Eve is not going to be wrestling very often anymore.
She doesn't need to, and I'm sure she's fine with that.
Absolutely. No reason for her to take any more bumps.
That's this week's profile, ladies and gentlemen. And now we're going to take another brief time out. And when we come back, we're going to go into this week's Ask the Booker fan-submitted question, Ask the Booker. And we'll do that when we come back. This is the Pro Wrestling Report, primetime Wednesday night.
Hey, this is Harry Smith. You're watching the Pro Wrestling Report on May2.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report, prime time Wednesday night, and it is indeed time for this week's Ask the Booker. And you can participate in this segment. All you have to do is send us an email to atb@pwrshow.com, atb@pwrshow.com. This week's question comes to us from EJ in Joliet, Illinois. EJ has the following question. Listen carefully, David Hero. Back in the 80s and 90s, WCW had the Clash of Champions Supercard. WWF had Saturday Night's Main Event as a Supercard. Fans could see these for free. Why has wrestling gone away from that? And do you think WWE should limit pay-per-views and bring back Saturday night's main event again?
No, they don't need to bring back Saturday night's main event or Clash of the Champions, because what is the one thing that has been missing in the last 15 years?
What's that?
Rusty Brooks, Iron Mike Sharp, Terry Gibbs, Steve Lombardi, AJ Petrucci, Barry O. All the job guys are gone. I mean, back when they had Saturday night's main event, it's because on Wrestling Challenge and Superstars, it was always the superstars against the enhancement talent. So that was your opportunity to see some main event matches. Now on Monday nights, it's like having a weekly Saturday night's main event or a Clash of Champions. I mean, all the guys on the shows, even though there's lower, mid-card, upper-card headliners, they're all stars.
And to that point, then on some of those weeks, you've got 3-hour editions, which are super shows, if you will.
Absolutely.
So I think that the television product has changed in such a way where you do still have these, and maybe they could, well, it's on the wrong day, but maybe one of the upcoming 3-hour Raws could be a Saturday night's main event. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that Saturday night's main event came back, I think, first in 1995 after being gone for a number of years. Then it was on Fox, I think, that year, and then came back on NBC, which the first 1 or 2 were fantastic. I mean, looked like pay-per-view shows. And then it became somewhat just an extension of that week's Raw.
Network TV does not want wrestling.
But Network TV did want wrestling.
Well, right, but that was
the ratings didn't show it. The viewers didn't want it.
Right, but that was a completely different time. And Ted
No,
Turner,
I'm talking even with the recent incarnations of
in the late 80s?
Saturday night's main event. No. When Saturday night's main event came back to NBC, they popped a pretty decent rating the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequent times, nobody tuned in. So it's not beneficial. I think the networks did want to give it a try again.
And do you think they didn't turn in because, of course, with the change in the eras and technology, that the fans got to read online what was happening?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas before, we didn't know.
Didn't know. And it was taped like 2 weeks before.
Sometimes a month before.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, and with Clash of Champions, well, that's because Ted Turner owned the network. Well, now that's not the case anymore. But no, I mean, as fun as the main events were on the Clash of Champions, and it was free and great matches, you got the same thing on Monday nights. May not be the same quality, but it's the same thing.
It doesn't have the same big feel to it because you're getting it on a regular basis, but it is indeed the same thing. What was better, Saturday night's main event, the main event, or the Clash of Champions?
Well, the main event with Hogan Andre was fantastic. It was so confusing. That was in '89.
Right here at the Bradley Center?
No. That was...
Oh, no, the Mega Powers exploded at the Bradley Center.
No, that was WrestleMania 5.
No.
The Mega Powers versus the Twin Towers.
The Mega Powers exploded here in Milwaukee, which led into the WrestleMania matchup.
WrestleMania 5.
When Elizabeth got knocked over, remember? Hogan carried her back and Savage attacked him?
It was called the Mega Powers Explode. They had their falling out.
Why do you always have to be right?
Because I am.
I'm telling you what happened. Here at the Bradley Center, the Mega Powers exploded, McMahon. They exploded.
Right. But what I'm saying is there was 2 real main events. Hogan Andre was the first one in Indianapolis.
That happened on the main event?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Was that the one with the championship?
Yeah, it was with the dual Hebners.
Oh, really? That was the main event?
See, I am the true historian on this.
You know what bothered me about that with the dual Hebners is Hogan went after a referee, attacked a referee, and all the fans cheered. Me as a younger fan said this is wrong.
They screwed the Hulkster.
They didn't screw him.
Yeah, they did. They cheated him.
He just got outthought. There's a difference. Ted DiBiase, money buys anything.
Absolutely. Just like that trophy.
No, skill, success, and ability and talent won this.
Gotcha.
Well, you look at this every week and you just sit there and you just see this Nelson family on here and you just say, I'm a loser. That's what goes through your head, right? I'm a loser. I'm a loser. I lost. I mean, you lost.
I did. And you know what?
You're like John Kerry.
I'm fine with it. John Kerry is freaking loaded. I'll be him any day of the week.
Want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you, EJ, rather, for that question. A good question. Ask the
From
Booker.
Joliet, Illinois. How about that?
ATB@PWRshow.com. And that will do it for this Wednesday night edition of the Pro Wrestling Report Prime Time. You can tune in again on Saturday night for the Pro Wrestling Report Prime Time. We'll have part 1 of our 3-part interview with Billy Gunn. And it's one you definitely want to tune into. Had a chance to sit down with Billy Gunn.
He was pretty candid, wasn't he, with you?
Extremely
candid.
Very honest. Had a chance to talk to Billy about a lot of things, including what might be next for him in the world of professional wrestling. You can see the beginning of that interview this Saturday night on Primetime Saturday Night. So, for David Hero, this is Damian Nelson saying thank you so much for tuning in to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Wednesday. We'll see you over the weekend.